Hey everyone, it's James Vagley here. Welcome to another episode of the MBA podcast. And we're rolling into the 200s now. It's September. This month, we're talking all about one of the core areas of our blueprint, Go Hands Free, Go Hands Off. And today, Ash, we're talking about systems engineering for dummies. No, we're not trying to rip off that book series at all. It's a very crucial topic. And I think in an industry of mortgage brokers and business owners, that probably systems and engineering isn't their skill set most of the time. I think it's really important that we simplify this as much as possible. And unfortunately, most brokers are doing it the exact opposite way than they should. Before we get into it, how are you doing over there in the black corner? Staying good?
Yeah, I'm good, James. Really, really good. This is the episode I needed about 25 years ago. I classify myself as a dummy, definitely with systems. And I think, my experience in the industry, the vast majority of mortgage brokers are creative, big picture people rather than small, detailed engineering kind of people. That's just generally the mix. So what that means is, whilst we all have a basic understanding of systems, we don't actually enjoy doing it. And it's so easy to get drawn into all the latest tech and system wizardry that's prevalent in our industry, which means we end up, instead of actually sitting down, mapping it out correctly, we end up just trying to plug in a whole bunch of things in the hope that it'll magically systemize everything for us, right?
Yeah. Actually, what you said before is it made me think of something. I've been around this industry 20 years. You've been a little longer. It's a big number. And think about when we were broking, that the tech wasn't even remotely what it is like now. You know, we were faxing off application forms and doing things in paper. And, brokers these days, it's a double-edged sword, have an amazing tech stack available to them to make their lives easier and, you know, basically more systemized. But at the same time, it makes things very complicated if you don't understand technology. So what you said, Ash, I wish I had this conversation 20 years ago. I would have been the same as a broker. I think that's interesting to take a moment to realize that we're living and operating in the best time possible, but also the hardest time possible because it's so confusing. Instead of print a paper application, fax it off, we've now got 1,001 fintech providers and CRM options and automations and AI and all this sort of stuff, causing brokers to incorrectly think about the way they systemize their business. Can you imagine being a broker these days, Ash? I mean, okay, listeners, we're not operating broking businesses anymore. We work with brokers. The tech there's a lot to it.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And I think you're right. I think you mentioned the word complexity. And I think, all of the wizardry, I think I called it, that's around, it's amazing. All of this stuff works. And we've spoken many times about Frankenstein's monster and trying to plug a whole bunch of things in. And I think that's really prevalent, and it's far more prevalent than it was. As you said, back when I was writing loans, it was find customer, visit customer, sign loan, fill out loan, stick loan on fax machine, wait for approval. Yeah, it might have been end to end 3, 4, 5 hours. Now I saw the industry stat not that long ago, or the data showed the average A to Z of a loan is 15 hours. So we've got all this amazing tech, and it takes 3 times as long to get a loan through to approval and settlement. Yes, there's a lot more compliance and legislation and customers' best interest, all very important evolutions in our industry. But you've got to ask yourself the question, why does it take so much longer? And I think a lot of it's got to do with the complexity. Like, I think, a loan or systemization of lending should be boiled down to its simplest components. There's this step, there's this step, there's this step, there's this step. How do I now build a system to support that. And building a system has got a lot of value to a business, right? We all know that. It's not just it helps you do things faster, hopefully, but it also allows you to quantify productivity, to quantify the cost versus income from a loan. Also allows you to project into the future when you might need to hire more people. And it also gives a documented structure to a business, which is, an important part of intangible value in a business. So you've got to do it, right? But just because there's a lot of tech now doesn't mean that it's any harder or easy or different than what it was when we were back writing loans. Like, the tech was different, but the process of writing a loan was exactly the same. It's like the fundamentals of credit haven't changed. Find a customer, present your options, suitable loan, sign it, submit it, deal with all of the minutiae that you have to, and then get it to settlement. So, systemization, James, what do you think? Like, do you think you should lead with business model first, system first, tech first? What do you think?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Yeah, I think the biggest issue that we find, excuse me, is, I think you mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, the fact that there's a lot of tech options around. They all sound great. My aggregator's given me this amazing CRM, plus there's all these bolt-ons. I'll just figure out how to use them. That's the default, is I've got this CRM, how can I use it more effectively? I've got this bolt-on, how can I use it more effectively? That sounds like a great time saver, I'll bolt that on. So it's leading, the default thinking and way of systemizing is tech first. Whereas what you said, we would flip it on its head and sort of suggest that that is the worst way of doing it. And in actual fact, the best way of doing it is focusing on, well, what you want to achieve. I would start with a piece of paper, or a big whiteboard, or a mind mapping chart, whatever you work best in. And I would think, okay, I would draw a line on the page from one side to the other and think, what needs to happen to write a loan? Like, customer comes in, what do I need to do technically to write a loan, to maintain compliance, to get the customer a great outcome and a great deal technically? I'd flow that out from left to right, from first knock on the door or referral, the minute that person comes in, through to settlement, and even and beyond. And then I'd also have another line underneath that where I look at the customer experience. So it's sort of twofold. You can't just look at it as, what do I need to do to write a loan? That's only half the equation. We need to work out, what is the customer experience from knock on the door to settlement and beyond, because that's actually more important than what you do technically. And then I would look at that and go, here's what I need to do to write a loan. Here's what I need to do to keep that customer happy, loving me, working with me. On paper, like steps, milestones, what happens in between, who does what, how do I achieve this, in a piece of paper. And then only once I understand how to write a loan efficiently and what the customer experience is and who's going to do what, that, Ash, to your question, that's where business model comes in. How do I allocate those tasks to achieve that outcome? And only after I've mapped that all out and I understand the experience, the efficiencies internally, who's doing what, then I'm going to, at the very end, go, how do I build this in the tech stack that I have available? Like, so many brokers lead with, the tech can do this, so I better do that. Let's say it sends out automated emails or automated SMSs on a fixed rate expiry. Who cares? Like, that might be not a very good idea in your loan process flow, client care. It might not be a very good client experience. You're using it because the tech does it. So that's probably where I would focus, Ash, is making sure our listeners know on a piece of paper what they want to do. How do I write a loan? How does it become an amazing client experience? And at the very end, whatever tech stack is most appropriate for me, I'll build it. So listeners, before I throw to you, Ash, I don't care which aggregator you're with, all of the pieces of technology are fine. Like, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you want to achieve, and then what tech stack is going to allow you to achieve that outcome in the most efficient way possible. Now, yes, that may involve changing aggregators if there's a superior tech solution. It may involve having multiple pieces of tech, but we're doing it in that way instead of looking at a new piece of tech and running towards it. I would rather go, here's what I want to achieve. My current tech stack won't allow me to do that. So that's why I might change aggregators or take on a different piece of technology, not because I'm leading with tech. I know that's a roundabout conversation, so maybe I'll throw to you and
No,
you
it's
can
good.
help
It's good. It's good. Look,
simplify that.
well, look, in the interest of the title of this episode and picking up the key word, which is dummies, right? So we're not saying dummies that you're not intelligent, but engineering and, sinking down into the detail, the small moving parts is sort of anathema. It's the opposite of what most brokers want to do. So, from my perspective, I know everybody listening to this episode they'll say to themselves, "I always put my clients at the centre of everything I do," and I'm sure that's true. But here's what actually can happen very easily, and I see this a lot. Right, is brokers end up building a system from their perspective. Right, how good can I make it looking for me? Right, yeah, and that's not a conscious thought, listeners. Right. But that's a belief system that sits underneath that you feel good about yourself because you've got lots of tech. It looks great. It's got lots of moving parts, and that's fantastic. So what I see one of the flow-on effects or the unintended consequences is that you can have a very good-looking tech stack, but from the customer's perspective, it doesn't deliver anything better to the customer. So I would say the first starting point would be to flip your thinking and look at what you're doing strictly from the client's perspective. And James, you said something really important, which I want to paraphrase, and that is, don't worry about how sexy your system looks. Worry about whether you're keeping the client updated. What's the client experience? It's probably the biggest hole I see in otherwise good-looking systems is, oh yeah, we use this, we've got this technology and our aggregator, then we do a video, then we do this, then we do that. And when I ask the question, what if the client doesn't respond to that message? How long do you wait to follow them up? And what do you do to make sure you get a response back? And I get these blank stares. Oh, we wait a couple of days. Is that documented in your system? No. So this is the possible mistake that can get made with overcomplicating systems is it should always, my opinion, serve to keeping the client as close to the campfire as you possibly can without letting them get burnt. I'm speaking in metaphors a little bit, right? But so we all know we want to keep our clients protected from all of the crap that goes on behind the firewall of getting a loan approved, right? All the fights you have to have, the arguments, the prioritizing the files, the stress, and all that stuff that goes on behind the firewall. You don't want your clients to see that. But you do want them to feel intimately connected to the process so that they know what's going on. You're getting updates all the time. You're chasing them up. If you send out a fact find to someone, you've had a triage or a lead, you've had a chat to them, you feel like they're happy, you send them out a fact find, you don't get it back for a week. You'd be amazed, James, and maybe not listeners, how often I see there's no process around. Well, what process have you got in place to keep in touch with that client to make sure that they don't fall out of your system and not send you back that document? Because that's just one example of putting system ahead of client engagement, right? That's allowing them to be too far from the campfire, if you know what I'm saying, right? So hopefully that makes some sense, listeners, right? So you want them close to the campfire, they can feel the warmth of what you're doing. They feel part of it, but you don't want them to be inside the fire getting burnt like you feel half the time. right?
I like the analogy, Ash. I've got another one for you. While you were talking, I just thought you're so right. What you're just talking about is you can't, um, for the lack of a better analogy, you can't sugarcoat a turd. You're like, you know, I think there's a lot of sugarcoating of turds. Now, this, technology, if we really think about it, often is sugarcoating a turd. Like, if, as you said, if you don't have a great loan process flow customer experience, and you're just bolting on pieces of technology, as you said, oh, the technology will send out a fact find, and I'm not following it up. I had a great conversation with a client, piece of tech, whiz bang automation, press a button, fact find goes out, automated emails to follow it up, blah, blah, blah. That's technology sugarcoating a turd. That's a crap client experience to have a great conversation, press a button, send out a fact find, and not follow it up properly. Like, that's a great
Correct.
example of using technology to sugarcoat a very ordinary client experience. Um, so I thought I'd throw that in. But going back, Ash, to your refocusing on the title of systems engineering for dummies, and um, I am very good with tech, but I'm not great at systems. So, listeners, I don't know where you sit. Ash said before he's not great with tech. I'm very good with tech, but not that good with systems. Um, so it doesn't matter if you're a James or an Ash or a you. You know, when we say systems engineering for dummies, um, we're not, saying that everybody, this is only for the dummies. It's like it's kind of for everybody in a way. We're looking to simplify systems, and the way to simplify systems is, in my business, I know how to get things done. I can map it out on a piece of paper. Do I know how to make that work in CRMs and Zapier and all of the tech? No, team does that. In your business, you know how to write a loan. I hope, like, you know, you're a mortgage broker, you should know how to write a loan. So, but do you need to know how to systemize that? Well, not necessarily. Like, if you know how to deliver a great outcome in your head, and you're great with people and you're great with getting the deal done, then you can put that down on paper. And you don't need to be a whiz bang systems person. You just need to know what you want to have happen, because there's always a solution in terms of systemizing that. So, Ash, in our business, I work out what we want to have happen, and the team systemizes that. In a mortgage business, the broker knows how to write a loan and what the client experience is. The team should be the ones responsible for systemizing that in the tech. So when we talk about systems engineering for dummies, listeners, you're the expert. Everybody can get a piece of paper and a pen and map it out. No one can fail at that task because you're already doing it. Then
I love it,
from there,
James.
it's just, yeah.
Sorry to jump in. I got excited, listeners. I have to jump in. Um, I just I just wanted to sort of uh, put a bit of a bookend on my opening statement, which was, I'm a dummy, right, when it comes to systems. But what I am is I know exactly what I want my client experience to be like, right? And I would say you do, James. I would say every broker I've ever worked with, they know what the client experience they want to have their client have. We want it to be perfect. They get this outcome, they get that outcome, they get this contact, this follow up, this feeling, this response. Or, that's what you know exactly what that looks like. So for me, systems engineering for dummies is pretty much what you said, James, which is get it out of your head, get it onto a piece of paper. Then, if you've got a team who have systems skills, get them to do it for you. If you don't have that, pay someone who does have those skills to do it for you. And I think this is an area where I think a lot of brokers, as business owners, probably should have a think about once they take that step of getting it out of their head onto paper. Do you want to go through setting it up yourself, or will you pay someone else a consultancy fee or whatever it happens to be to come in and go, you know what, I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly the outcome and the touch points and the journey you want your client to have. I will build exactly that system on the tech that you want end to end. Here's what it will cost and here's how long it will take. I'd be doing that. Like, and I think that comes back a bit to our previous episode, James, which is about investing in your business by getting expertise to help you build out system engineering, because the dummies, to me, what it should be is just systems engineering for people who don't know how to do it. Right? I don't know how to do it. I know it. I know what I want it to look like and the end result, but how to do it? No, I need somebody else who's not just good at that stuff, but loves doing it. Most brokers hate doing it. They force themselves to do it. And therefore, it's not a great experience for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually,
So,
Ash, probably what would be a better title for this is systems engineering for brokers that recognize that systemizing is not the best use of their time. That's probably another good
I like
title,
it.
because listeners, it's probably not the best use of your time. As Ash said, I think at this start of this episode, or perhaps last episode, talked about that a lot of brokers are great at creativity, and we're people. We talk to people. We're great helping people. That's a lot of brokers. That type of person's not usually great at at systems. So yeah, it's just understanding that it's not the best use of your time to be doing this. And we do see a lot of brokers, Ash, trudging through the mud, so to speak, trying to figure out tech, when the opportunity of cost of them losing a week trying to figure out how to use their CRM and install systems, that could have gone and talked to 5 more people and written 3 more loans, and they could have paid a VA overseas to become their CRM ninja and have them systemize everything that they do. And we have a complete system around, how to do this, by the way. So listeners, if that's what you want to do, this is what our clients are doing all day, every day. They're not sitting there systemizing themselves. They're doing it smarter. So just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, that's a perfect point to wrap up. Honestly, to me, systems engineering for dummies is simply about accepting and realizing that I'm neither the best person to be doing this, the most skilled person to be doing this, nor is it the best use of my time. As long as I know, as the business owner, as long as I know the experience and the outcome for the client that I want to have in place, you don't need to know every nuance of your system. Like, as you said, James, you don't need to know how Zapier works. You don't need to know every possible function of the multifaceted, complex, whiz-bang CRM system you've got access to. You don't need to know all of that, right? That's a trap. That's the dopamine. That's going down the path of spending your mental energy on learning things you don't need to learn, right? You don't need to learn all of that. You can build a fantastic business without knowing all of that. You just need to know what you're trying to achieve, get it all out of your head. Here's where it starts. Here's how it ends. Here's the client experience I want. And somebody else come in, build this for me, and I'll check in with you to make sure it's staying on track. That's it. Why would you try to do it yourself? That's my dummies. Just, have your fingerprints on it, but then have someone else set it up.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great summary. Why would you try and do it yourself? Listeners, take this episode on board seriously, because we work with hundreds of brokers, every day, every month, every year. So we've seen this so many times, and everything that we produce in these podcast episodes are based on what we see in the real world. So, if you take some of these things on board, you're going to be light years ahead of everybody else, and especially in this topic of systemization, which is a big one right now. So, re-listen to this episode, think about how you are going about systemizing your business. And there's a lot of, if you haven't listened to last week, make sure you listen to last week, and the next couple of weeks as well will be very valuable as well in this whole concept of building out systems and a business that can go hands off. So we'll leave it there, Ash, for this week. And I guess we're looking forward to seeing you and all of our listeners for another episode next week.
Discussion. And last comment before we sign off, James, is, and what are we, September 2024? Yeah, 3, 4, 5 years ago, brokers were doing all of the system building themselves because there wasn't a skill set of people out there who you could bring in to do it for you. And it would have been very expensive to hire a qualified system engineer, that make 250 grand a year. Now the industry's evolved, it's dynamic. Bring in people with expertise at low cost, actually, to do it for you. That's the shift in thinking. So, yeah, great discussion, James. I will see you next week.
Sounds like a plan. See you then, Ash. Listeners, have a great one. Bye for now.